This is one I've definitely always been interested in. Uh, and I've seen so many examples in the world of not only just mastery, but what it does and what it feels like and why it exists and what it can do and what it is as a what turns out to be an extremely important part of human being. There's something about taking something all the way to the level of mastery that draws people in. People want to go and watch somebody who's a master of anything do what they do. There's something about it that flips a switch in us almost. And as usual, it's on two levels. It's on the level of how you feel when acting that thing out and the effect that it has on the world around you, on the environment, including people. And this is true if you're just totally alone. Like if you're some dude who lives on an island and you have a bow and arrow, and the first day you take that thing out, you totally suck with it. Like you miss all the time, your hit rate is super low, but over time, obviously your hit rate is never going to be 100% because reality just doesn't allow that, but eventually it'll get pretty high. And once you get to that point where you're like basically capped out, that's the thing about mastery. It almost caps out. It doesn't get to 100%, but it gets so fine that your gains with that particular thing slow down, but the gains that you do get are ever more detailed and minute and subtle, but things that only a true master sees and masters. And eventually when you're on that island and you're out there with your bow and arrow, you get this feeling when you have that shit in your hands after a while. After a couple of years, something starts to happen while you have it equipped. You're not just sort of firing away trying to get food. It starts to feel rhythmic. It starts to feel almost like art in a way. And you start to notice you hit things more. You start to anticipate the movements of what you're shooting at. And you start to feel the way you pull the arrow back, pull the string back, and hold the bow. Everything about it is better and better and better, and just feels more and more synergized. And after years and years of that, if some stranger showed up on the island and saw you hunting with that bow, they'd be like, dude, they would like to watch you hunt. And my supreme example, the thing that I would always go to, is Michael Jordan. That dude, there's going to be people who come along and play basketball who, on paper, are better, who score more points, who get more steals, more rebounds. But there's something about that guy's style. There's something about the way he played is what makes him who he is. He used to say that every single game that he plays, he tells himself, he pretends that there's somebody in the audience who's never seen him play. And he pretends that they came there, they paid their money to see the greatest on earth play. And he plays for that person. He always played 100%. And people from all over the world came to watch that man play. And he became a world-renowned, everybody knows his name, for playing this game where you throw a ball into a hoop. And everything kind of has that. And I really think that as a human being, you can't really get the full human experience from cradle to the grave without truly mastering at least one thing. at least one. And the thing about mastery is you can't necessarily just pick something and say, I'm going to master that. That's not enough for you to get to that level. There has to be that component of a sort of gravity, something that just sort of draws you to that. Some unexplained force that keeps your interest in that first period of time where you just totally suck at it. Nothing feels natural. You're learning the techniques and the basics and all this stuff. You have to have that thing that keeps you there during that. And some people master multiple things. Some people are just good, and I've seen this. Some people master one thing, and they go on doing that for a little while. And maybe it's a thing that involves competing with other people. And then after that, they master something else, and then something else, and then something else. There's some people who are just generally good at learning, and intelligence does play a big part of it. Intelligence and your actual physical body and the shape that that's in. Like Michael Jordan, by his sixth season, he was 99.9% as good as he's ever going to be, but the improvements that he's getting are so fine. It's no longer, when he's at the age of 15 and he's getting 5-10% gains per year, he's getting like 0.0001% mastery improvements per year. But those improvements are so minute and fine-grained and detailed. They are things that only he can see and things that he is unable to impart and teach to somebody else. When you're at that level, when you are a master of something and you're able to teach it, you're at a level that ceases to be able to be taught. You can hand somebody the rules, the basics, the techniques, the things that are needed. But interest is a funny thing, man. Across the board, with people too, with jobs. Interest is this weird guiding light that seems to have a relationship with you, with me, with all of us. We all seem to have this strange relationship with interest, and it seems to sort of grab our eyes and our attention and pull us in a weird way. Like, we have favorite colors, we have favorite music, we have favorite clothing styles. And the question as to why isn't completely clear. But when we involve ourselves with those things, we feel something very specific. And mastery, the way it feels, you'll hear people describe it. They'll say things like, they were in this zone. They reach this certain place, this certain state where, sort of cliche, the past and the present completely fade into the background. And you are completely with it. You and this thing are one process. The friction ceases. It's one of the most frictionless states that there is. And it's quite addictive. And like bodybuilders, when they reach their sort of maximum size, the gains they start to get at that size are ever more fine and minute and detailed. And it really carves those muscles out. And a bodybuilder moves on to posing. A good bodybuilder, a good person who likes to show off their muscles, knows how to move their body and flex their body in a way that most shows what they've built. Even a person on the side of the street that's making food, cutting stuff up, tossing it around, it's hypnotizing. Because it also says something about the person that's doing it. You instantly know this person has not only been doing this for a while, but they were able to let those little tendrils of themselves truly seep into this thing and they let this thing seep into them. And we always have and we always will seek out the best of the best to watch them. And then we'll try to find other best of the bests and have them go up against each other and just get a real show going. And, of course, speaking is a skill, thinking is a skill. Having control over your faculties and your body is a skill. I mean, it doesn't sound like it, it's easy to skip over, but it truly is. Balance is a skill. And when it comes to thinking, it's not so much the ability to have thoughts occur to you that's a skill. It's the organization factor. It's knowing which thoughts are related and in what way, and knowing how to classify those thoughts and turn them into something larger, a connected series of thoughts that builds a picture that you can represent in words, where you can truly flesh out what it feels like to understand something. And each and every person that we meet, when you think of them, when they come to mind, this ping bounces off the chest, and we feel their very being in relationship to our own. It's almost like this weird combined sum, but, and it's strange, too. It's one thing to have somebody come along and say, wow, you're really fucking good at that. But it's another to have somebody part ways with their money to see it or buy it. Mastery, truly, is the level of art. It is when you are a person who is enacting, living, being art while doing this thing. And as much as we are humble about it and don't necessarily want to say it, there is a certain validation in somebody being willing to not only pay for what it is that you do, but bid for it against other people to where they absolutely have to have this. Like Picasso. I mean, if he would be alive to see what happened with his work later on down the road, I mean, there's a certain degree of separation and isolation, distinction, that this character emerges when they're doing something that people need. When they're doing something that when people look at, they feel this thing that they just can't get through normal everyday experience. Even a good salesman is absolutely fascinating to watch. A good speaker, a truly good speaker, it's almost a hypnosis. They are painting on your brain in such a way that actually feels welcoming. You want those words. You need more of those words, because those words are doing things to you that a master could only do. And a terrible speaker, it just causes you to recoil. You want them to stop talking, and you wish that they would better assemble their thoughts and everything. It's just it's the same with everything. I mean, you don't want to sit next to a bad driver. You want somebody who's at least decent in terms of skill. And then you got things like NASCAR, where these guys are so good. The things that they're learning in each race, they're almost not even learning anything. The things they're learning are so small, it's hard to even say or feel like they're learning anything, but they still are. And the thing is, with each particular thing that one can master, there are other things, peripheral things, that one can get into that changes that thing that you've mastered. Like if you're a sword master, if you're really good with a sword, and you start lifting weights, or you start running, then it changes your ability with those swords. there's always, I guess you could call them buffs or peripheral things that are connected, maybe not even obviously connected, that buff the thing that you're a master at, and it just makes you that much better. It's why the NFL and Sports Day have such comprehensive programs for their athletes. It's just so expansive because they want to do everything possible to bring these guys to the absolute maximum. And truly, a master is taking the very probability, the very fabric of this universe, and bending it in their favor. There is just the raw probability of things. There is the average person picking up a basketball and taking a shot from the free throw line. Somebody who isn't experienced with basketball. And there's probably an average number you would get in terms of hit or miss. But Michael Jordan, his talent, his mastery, bends probability in his favor, and he will most assuredly make more shots. He will most assuredly have far more control over the ball. He will most assuredly know what to do and when, instinctually seeming, in most situations on the court, making decisions in microseconds in real time as it unfolds. Because within these games, it's a fascinating just thing to observe, because there are these games, basketball, football, and tennis, and all this stuff, where there is this area that you play, obviously, and there's these rules and set parameters, but you never actually know what's going to unfold on the court. So you can have multiple iterations. It would be absolutely boring if every single play and pass and shot and call was scripted or somehow known beforehand. It's the fact that we can have these multiple iterations over and over and over again, multiple seasons, that makes it fresh, because every game is new. There are no two identical games, obviously. And that's the same across the board. Although things do seem, feel, look identical on a day-to-day basis, there is no two identical anything ever. It's always fresh. It's always brand new, but we tend to find things that we like and continue to do them. And you'll hear people say it. There's this thing about work, too, where people, and it's completely understandable, you can put myself in this boat, too, where people would prefer to make money at something they like doing or love. It is in this circumstance that a person can truly master their money-making endeavor. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason people say that. It's because we want to have this thing that interests us suddenly make itself available. Suddenly we understand what it is, and we want to be able to do that and make money too. We want to make it practical as well. And then on the other end of the spectrum, it's unlikely that you'll master something that you don't like doing. Very unlikely. And if your motives if you end up choosing a motive that's maybe third or fourth down the list, it'll affect your ability to master that thing. For example, people often say things like, I didn't do it for the money, I didn't want to do it for the money, I just love doing this. And they just happen to make money as a side effect, almost as a symptom of how good they are at this. That's the sort of place people ideally want to be. And that's the strange thing, too, is that there are so many humans. Within this vast array of humans, there is just a huge, just diverse pantheon of interests. And some of these interests that people have, to me, are absolute shit. Like, I couldn't fathom caring or being interested in some of the things people could not live without. And I'm sure vice versa. And isn't that just a great scheme? Isn't that just well done? You know, you want to say bravo, because the more humans that you end up with, the more areas, needs, and practical applications a society can end up having with its people. And then you set up a situation where there is enough, let's say. There is this sort of this base, this ground, where everybody is, especially for the United States, where if you have an interest, especially now with the internet and all these things, if you have an interest, people will find you and you will find people. You will find a way to keep getting good at this thing and creating ways for people to find you. I mean, I've seen videos of people just putting a camera on themselves and just waking up in the morning and eating breakfast and sort of just going about their day. And it's the most mundane thing ever, but millions of people will watch it. And that person that they're watching is very, very good at translating themselves on camera and making the viewers feel as if they're a part of it. Because being good on camera is not, it's not an easy thing. It's that observer factor. Ask yourself, is it easier to be on camera or be with a person? Is it easier to press play and start talking or sit down with a stranger? And I guess by easier, I mean, which one are you more quickly and able to find comfort with what you're saying and doing? And it's amazing what I've seen people be good at and love doing. Some people love farming. Some people love it. They love fucking with the land, planting stuff, raising animals, just tending to this whole ecosystem. Some people love that. Some people love climbing up mountains and just, telling people about it, recording it, and just letting people know that they've done this thing. But at the same time, the experience of that person on that mountain, they're feeling something that is akin to this premium synergy. And that's what it's about. And that's why I asked a couple of videos back, when you were young, did you find something that interested you, and did you master it? Did you get good at it? And if you did, what happened after that? Are you the sort of person who is good at mastering multiple things? And if you didn't get good at it, why? Because that's almost more important than a lot of other things. If there is something or someone that truly gripped you, and you did not see it through to mastery, why? It might be more important than we would like to think. Because there's also a sense of satisfaction. And I can't stress how important that feeling is. Satisfaction. That's when you do something and it feels a certain way while you're doing it, and you see the fruits of it that end up a certain way, and then you get feedback that is a certain way. Those things brought together is satisfaction. And even more if people are willing to pay you for it. Some people are good at eroticism. Some people are good at sex. Some people are good at being attractive, being good looking, being hot. Which is kind of a crude way to put it, but it's true. There are some people who can just go into basically any situation and just pull the attention of everybody there, male, female. There are some people who are just like that. Because there is some way of existing, there's some way of feeling, there's some way of moving within themselves and comprehending themselves and comprehending the room and the people in it that makes people wonder, that makes people want to know something about them, anything. And obviously there's some people who are great at music, some people who are great at cooking, and I could obviously list examples all day, but the main thing is, in this life, you should probably, I would recommend it, I would never tell anybody to do anything, but I would recommend mastering at least one thing. And I mean getting so good at that shit that you're making art in the process of it. And when you're there, you'll know exactly what it feels like. It's very, very different from just normal day-to-day existence. And those people who are good at mastering multiple things, they're going to get good at things that they care about. Even relationships, even their marriage, the relationship with their family. All human relationships, really. A person who is good at things in general is constantly bending favor towards themselves without necessarily thinking about it or calling it that or even looking at it that way. That's just what's happening. All those unlikely things, all those frayed edges that could end up going in a bad direction or an unfavorable direction seem to go their way more often than not. They're given the benefit of the doubt. They're trusted. They're also emulated. They're envied. They're copied. They set the tone. And this is all of our potential. You put a bunch of people in a room. Who ends up influencing who the most without necessarily trying to influence? Who is it that people start to mimic, emulate? Whose style feels a certain way, attracts you? And style is another thing. The word cool is another thing. I'm not exactly sure when that came about, but I'm partially convinced that it's a creation of the United States too. Because before a certain time, I don't think anybody was cool. I think everybody was some shade of not cool before, I don't know, the 1920s, the 1930s. Once you started having these people show up in the United States who were just these great vehicles of emulation. You know, your Marlon Brandos. That guy, that dude who's just a human, who's just a person like all of us, is one of the most emulated human beings ever. And there's female versions of this as well. And these are people. I mean, you could definitely consider acting, of course, a skill. And some would say it's an art. But it's only an art when somebody has truly mastered it. Somebody who, while acting to themselves, are persuaded that they are this character living this situation. A bad actor is like a bad everything else. It'll cause you to recoil and wish that they were a better actor. It breaks your spell. It breaks your hypnosis. It destroys the plausibility of the entire story that's happening. A good actor pulls you in so much that while you are sitting here watching this thing that you know is not real, that you know is fake. Part of you believes it's real. A good actor makes some part of the audience actually think it is real. And that's an amazing talent to be able to do that. But you can also take that out of film and apply it to the everyday. Because everybody is, in some form or another, actors. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way or a way to imply a lacking of authenticity or sincerity. I mean, we all have different shades and ways of being for different people. Our grandmother, our mother, our father, our wife, our children. We are the same at the core, but we shift a little bit. And we are this different role. We are a father for some and a student to others. And a human being who is able to master one thing is more easily able to master things like this, because human relationships, and the opinions of your fellow human being are going to be some of the most important things you ever cultivate. They are going to be the branches and the roots and the leaves of the tree that is your entire time here on earth. And some of the most rewarding and painful experiences you'll ever have will be with other people. And the most connected a person can feel to anything is to another person. Here you have these strangers who relate, who feel familiar almost, who have a sense of likeness. I find it helpful to, of course, I'll always go back to this, to be able to live on two levels at once. There is the part of you that is completely plugged into the present, is completely sincere, is being honest, both in thought and action and belief, but also is able to think strategically, is also able to comprehend the ramifications of what you're saying and doing. The word manipulation and manipulative is a bit harsh, but there is surely a place for the word manipulation, usually associated to the negative, to the one who seeks power. A power-seeking person, their core talent is manipulation, excessive manipulation. And the thing about manipulation is once you're aware that it's happening, you become immune to it. But that's the trick. It's like I said with acting. You're so pulled in and believing this role that a really good actor will keep you engaged on that level. And it's not always so easy to pierce the veil, so to speak. But as I was saying, two levels at once. Sincere, present, ever-changing, as well as strategic, static, and organized. It's possible to feel a person, feel your relationship with them, and have plans for them and yourself. And it's a very good skill to know the part of you that never changes, who's the same no matter what relationship you get involved in, as well as the part of you that needs to change for different relationships. Needs to. Mandatory, not negotiable. And if you don't, if you fail to do that, you will not form a network of people in your life who have distinct meaning, who have a true sense of bonding. You're not truly there, because each different person is truly like a chemical reaction that makes a brand new chemical for each relationship that starts and unfolds. And the depth to which you bond is equal to the strangeness of that chemical, the uniqueness of that chemical. Two people who have known each other for 30 years in a room full of people at a party have a whole other level of connectivity in that room. They have a whole just litany of psychological and emotional platforms to navigate. And most people like to go out with a friend because there's a grounding there. There's a whole universe that's shaped while you're with another person, or two or three. And obviously the more people, the more complex, and the more the shapes change, but this is how it is. And there's always that part of us too that is sort of desiring solitude. I don't know about you guys, but for me that's the case, because I love it. I'm different alone than I am with people, obviously. I mean, not different, but it's almost like you can take that energy that's aiming outwards when you're dealing with other people and bring it inwards and examine things in a way that you just can't do when other people are around, you know. And that's why I think it's important, again, to live on two levels, to have periods of solitude and periods of just all kinds of people of all sorts. And while it is not important what everybody thinks of you, it is important what some people think of you. Some people who are important to you, whose opinion matters, whose very few words can lift you up very high or bring you down very low, because what they say matters. It hits you a certain way. But my point is, too, a person who's able to put together a collection of things that they've maybe not quite mastered, but say there's a handful of things they've mastered, and there's another handful of things that they've gotten quite good at, skilled at, adept. And then there's a range where the list gets longer and longer, but as you go, your mastery and skill in things starts to decrease, but you have some knowledge of it. The more you have of that sort of ecosystem, the better and more mastered a human being in general you are. And in that case, you're really able to get the most out of your particular human experience that plays toward your strengths and your interests. Because really, that's what I've always done, and that's what I always will do. I love watching and listening to people who are masters of something. Doesn't matter what it is. That's what TikTok and half of the internet is people showing you. What an interesting time.